It's a dog-eat-dog world, but I'm told every dog will have his day, so maybe someone will throw me a bone because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Or so I'm told. That's vaguely scientific. Move over, little dog. A mean old dog is moving in. I am Derek. There was a farmer had a dog, and his name was Jim the Scientist. Hi, Jim.
Hey, dogs are cool. I like to pet them.
I actually sounded this out. Jimthescientist, and Jim the...
Thank goodness I didn't try to do that, because I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, I can't.
That's amazing.
How much is that doggy in the window? Please welcome back our guest this week, Catherine. Hello,
What's up?
Catherine.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
This is the show where we answer the most out-of-this-world questions from our listeners in a manner that we commonly refer to as vaguely scientific. But before we do that, there was something we were supposed to talk about. Oh, right. It's time for the fun science fact of the day, Jim.
All right. I feel like this is something that a lot of people probably do know already, but I think it's really funny. On September 9th, 1947, Grace Hopper recorded the first instance of an actual computer bug. A moth had gotten stuck in the Mark II computer at Harvard and caused a system malfunction.
I feel a little bad now because I didn't know this, and then you said most people know this. And
I think it's great then, because now you learned it, and that's awesome.
I learned it. Yeah, and so this is actually where the expression computer bug comes from what I saw.
Yeah, I think it's really funny. I always reminded me of the stories of people bringing their computers into, like, tech support places and, like, Geek Squad, and it'd just be full of ants, and I'm like, how do you even let your computers get like this? At least with a computer in 1947, you have the excuse that it's the size of a room, so bugs are going to move in, you know?
That makes so much sense. I never knew that either.
With the fun science fact out of the way, we should move on to our first question this week, which I think will make all of my intro shenanigans make a bit more sense. Because
oh, yeah.
Question 1 this week is, why is Clifford the big red dog's size so inconsistent?
It's because he's red.
It is. It's the redness.
Yeah.
All right, question 2.
So I read about, I read about it. That was unintentional. I looked up words and I put them together in my brain so I understood them. And I guess the reason that Clifford is so big is he started out as the runt of his litter. But his owner, Emily Elizabeth, loved him so much that the love caused him to grow very, very, very big. So my theory is that the reason he's so big, or the reason his size changes so much, is that depending on the antics that Clifford is getting up to from day to day, maybe Emily Elizabeth loves him a little more or perhaps a little bit less.
I think I considered that. I considered that as a possibility, but I ultimately think that Emily Elizabeth's love for Clifford is never really in question. And so I don't think that, I don't know, it would take some convincing for me for that one.
Well, I mean, like, if he knocks over your garage, you're going to love him a little bit less for a few hours. You know what I mean?
I think Emily Elizabeth loves Clifford unconditionally.
Well, what if he sits on her swing set and it breaks in half?
That would be a problem.
Yeah. That would be a problem.
Can you imagine how much collateral damage Clifford must be responsible? What kind of insurance policy do you think covers Clifford's antics? That's
interesting. One of the things that I don't remember which president it was, but one of the presidents, whoever was the acting president at the time, once praised the Clifford the Big Red Dog book series for the fact that Clifford, despite the fact that he gets into a lot of trouble and he has a tendency to be a little accident prone in that sense, one of the important things about it is that it shows that people are kind and compassionate and forgiving. So Clifford is always forgiven for any of his mistakes.
Well, he is a dog, and I feel like people are generally more generous to dogs than, say, a human that was 10 feet tall. Or 8 to
Yeah.
35 feet, as depending on the book
8
you
to
were reading.
35.
Right.
I actually happened to see the 2021 Clifford film.
I was going to ask if anybody saw that.
I did. I watched it with my little cousins at Christmas time at my nanny's house. And I found online today that they did make the conscious call that when Clifford is big, he is exactly 10 feet tall in the movie.
Yeah.
And I felt like they did a pretty good job like sticking to that. Like, I feel like they tried really hard. What I did find funny with the movie was that at the beginning, spoiler alert, or not really, I guess, because it's the beginning. You'll see this in the first 30 seconds that in the movie, Clifford starts and when he's a puppy, when he's tiny. And when he's tiny, I felt like his size was very inconsistent. Because one minute he's like, maybe a couple months old dog running across the street. And then the first time he jumps into Emily Elizabeth's arm, he looks like a newborn puppy. And when I was watching this with my family, I literally remember my nanny saying in that moment when Emily Elizabeth picked him up for the first time, he's so tiny. Why is he so small?
Why is he so small?
So they did a better job with when he was large, which I thought was funny. But when he was tiny, I felt like it was inconsistent. Now, that may have just been me, but...
Yeah.
That's fair. I read that you mentioned the 10 feet tall. I read that officially Clifford in the books is said to be 25 feet high from paws to the top of his head.
Wow.
But depending on the books that you read, his size is never really to scale. But in this movie, they decided on 10 feet because they wanted him to be, quote, too big but still able to fit inside.
Yeah,
that makes
sense.
Because it takes place in New York, yeah?
Yes, which is a tough spot to have a large dog, especially a 10-foot dog, I would imagine.
I seem to recall that in the actual book series that they lived in the city and they had to move out of the city because the dog got so big. Or maybe that was the cartoon.
I actually remember the books more from... Whenever I think of the Clifford books, I think of the dentist's office because that's... My dentist had a bunch of them sitting on, like, next to the magazines for kids to read. And I used to watch the PBS Clifford cartoon. And I do know that the premise of that is that he gets too big for the city and they have to move to this island where he has all this space to run around.
That's what I might be thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember if that is from the books or not.
Do you think there's like maybe an eldritch component, like a dark spell or a dark magic that leaked into Clifford, depending on the strength of this force coming in from another reality, that perhaps his size changes? Like if he gets far away from the apex of this hole in the universe that is bleeding into him, that he shrinks, and if he gets closer.
If you watch the movie, there are hints of that.
Interesting.
The 2021
I'm
movie,
afraid.
to clarify. I don't know about the other TV series, but...
So that is not the direction I thought Jim specifically was going to go. However, I did account for... I was almost certain Jim was going to say that Clifford is not a normal Earth dog. And that you were that your conjecture might be that he is an alien.
Well, no, they show him being born as a puppy on Earth.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, my rebuttal to that was we do know that Clifford has siblings and dog parents who are all normal dog size.
Yeah.
Aliens, that seems like something Jim might say.
Maybe he's radioactive.
It's Emily Elizabeth's love it's not an unless Emily Elizabeth has eldritch powers.
It's possible, because the thing is, maybe her eldritch powers have amplified her love to sort of a Chthonian degree, and it makes him bigger. But sometimes, if her powers wane, like if the pact that she made is like expiring or something, he starts to shrink back down a bit.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Only the most scientific of theories here on Vaguely Scientific.
I wanted to bring something up that isn't about Clifford's size, but because that...
But it's about Cthulhu.
It is not about Cthulhu. Cthulhu, the big green squid bat. Well, you mentioned the movie, and something that comes to my attention now when I think of Clifford, it's Clifford the big red dog, meaning Clifford has two elements about his character that make him extraordinary, right? Mm-hmm. He's big, and he's this bright red color.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I never really thought of the red color as being all that weird. I just thought, because he's like a cartoon, I just thought this is the art style, and
right.
but he's huge, like he's a giant dog. And then I saw trailers for this movie, and then all of a sudden it hits me, oh, that is like an abnormal red color.
Yeah. Well, because the movie is live action, and so, I mean, as live action as you can make a 10-foot big red dog. So I feel like they tried to, like, make it almost a more realistic red, because it's not like in the books just like one shade of red. Like, his fur has texture.
Yeah.
It is
Sure.
a little strange. I mean, I know Clifford can't help it himself, but the color is a little interesting.
Yeah, which leads, I think, back very nicely to the eldritch aspect of this question.
Keeping us on task.
Yeah.
I have a rebuttal to this, but I'm going to hold on. I'm going to hold off of it.
I have nothing else in the eldritch department, so if you want to rebut it right now, that's fine.
Well, the last point I thought was neat about the red color, I just happened to read when Norman Bridwell, who is the author, when they asked him why is Clifford red, he said, it was red because I happened to have red paint on the drawing table that night.
Aww.
And I was like, that's how I do art.
That's awesome. I love that.
Like, how did you choose your color palette? What did I have left?
That's so cool. That's just like commit and stick with it.
Yeah.
Commit and stick with it. And also, for me, it's like put off refreshing my paint supply.
Yeah. Yeah, what colored pencils do you have left that haven't been sharpened down to the nub? Well, this red one right here.
It's interesting that you chose all these really ugly colors to do this painting. And we're like, well, it's one of the later ones I did.
Could I share a couple of statistics about Clifford that I found on Reddit?
Please.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how accurate these are. I did not fact check them. But I'm just going to read this to you because I thought this was funny. Okay, here we go. Clifford is around 25 feet tall. So based on the average weight and height of a regular lab, Redditor Greg Nuttall, that's the source, estimated that he would weigh around 87 tons.
Ooh.
If Clifford was to poop in proportion to a human,
oh no,
by weight, that would be around 1,320 pounds of dog doo-doo a day.
Oh, like in Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Yep.
In case you need to visualize it a different way, according to these calculations, that would be about 423 cubic feet of poo fitting nicely into a single dumpster.
Interesting.
I'm glad I don't live near Clifford.
Yeah, that would be a tough neighborhood to live in, I'm sure.
They gotta get into like the manure industry, like the fertilizer industry or something.
For real.
That could be their main export.
It might be.
Yeah.
They have to be careful about what he eats.
Off their little island.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the bottom line is that Clifford is whatever you want him to be.
It's whatever you... I learned that Clifford was originally going to be named Tiny the Big Red Dog.
That's a good one.
Norman Bridwell's wife, Norma Bridwell. So, right, Norman and Norma. I thought that was crazy. But she said that name was too obvious, and she suggested the name of her childhood imaginary friend, Clifford. That's how that happened. So here's what I think the actual answer to this question is. So in the books, Clifford is said to be 2 years old. Which would make him probably full grown by ordinary dog standards. And I was reading dogs take like an average of anywhere from 6 to 24 months, depending on the breed and the size of the dog, to reach their full adult size. But Clifford, being not only a bigger breed, he's listed as having elements of Labrador, Hungarian Vizsla, and Bloodhound that went into the design of Clifford, but it is officially stated that he is a mutt. So because he's a bigger breed of dog, and also he's an abnormally giant dog, I thought maybe it actually takes him a little over 24 months to reach full adult size. Mm-hmm. And also thinking Emily Elizabeth isn't the only person who loves Clifford.
Oh, good point.
So maybe these books aren't necessarily told in chronological order, and Clifford is actually still growing.
Oh.
That's my answer.
I see. Yeah, because I mean, kind of like Thomas the Tank Engine. You know, maybe these stories are compiled from many different experiences, and they're laid about in a non-linear fashion.
That's a really good point, actually.
And that also fits into the movie. I mean, again, didn't see the movie, but from what I have seen of the movie, Clifford seems like he's still a puppy through most of it, right? But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, maybe he has not grown up all the way, and that's why he's only 10 feet tall in the movie.
And then he has to move to the island.
Yeah.
I also learned that there are 80 books.
Oh boy.
Of Clifford the Big Red Dog. And there are extras. I don't know if that counts, but there's also Clifford the Small Red Puppy, which was started in 1985.
Huh.
No.
But 80 books, the last few of which were published after Norman Bridwell's death in 2014. So that's a lot of Clifford.
Yeah. So listeners, if you want to go out and put them in size order, not release order, and get back to us about these 80 books and which one is the correct, and what is the correct reading order. Because if it's size order, making it chronologically, then I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you take all of Clifford's, misadventures and find when he's smallest and work your way to when he's biggest, that's just showing us proof there that he's just getting bigger. That's all.
I wonder if he gets more mature as he gets bigger, or if this is a fool's errand and it's just all.
Well, he's still a dog. It is another thing that I read is Bridwell never wanted to do Clifford Goes to Space or Clifford meets any other, like he wanted Clifford to always be a dog. Like he acts like a dog. He does dog things.
The dog went to space.
Well,
didn't they have Clifford Goes to School and stuff?
I think they did. There's also one Clifford Gets a Job at one point, but I would have to look into this because I think those titles might be misleading as to what Clifford actually does in those books.
Okay, because I guess some dogs do go to school or work if they're service animals. So
yeah.
All right, justified.
I remember in the PBS cartoon they gave him more of a human personality, but that's I guess not really in the spirit of the original.
The cartoon is in a different canon.
Yeah, but if you like those, then hey, you're welcome to. Well, let us know, listeners, what you think about Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Mm-hmm. And put them in the right order.
And put them. I want somebody to do that.
That would be amazing, actually. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, Derek, are you familiar with the fire triangle?
Yeah, it's just heat, fuel, and oxygen.
But what if it wasn't?
What?
What if things burned because they were filled with a flammable essence?
Don't be silly, Jim. That's not how fire works.
Sure, we know that now, but only after scientists committed a little oops-a-daisy.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Before we discovered oxygen, people were looking for a theory to explain why things burned and rusted, or really any of the things that materials do that qualifies as oxidation.
And that's where phlogiston comes in. Substances that were phlogisticated would release their phlogiston as they burned. Once all the phlogiston was used up, they would go out.
Well, many scientists contributed to the phlogiston concept over the years. Some thought it was simply the combustible material in the object, and others claimed phlogiston was responsible for color, or that it caused some materials to be lighter than others.
That last point punched a hole in the theory. Some materials actually gain weight after they burn, and metals get heavier as they oxidize. So to work this into the phlogiston theory, they claimed that phlogiston was lighter than air. But no amount of lightness could really account for the differences in weight that they were seeing. So when hydrogen was discovered, scientists thought maybe they'd finally found phlogiston. But it turns out that hydrogen was just part of the puzzle. Combustion experiments in closed chambers showed that oxygen was the responsible element. The mysteries of combustion and the changes in weight could easily be explained by factoring in oxygen.
It was kind of interesting how scientists use phlogiston to solve the problems that oxygen caused, but really their idea of phlogiston was more like the fuel in the fire triangle.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting.
But now we know that there is no fuel essence inside of different materials. There are tons of different kinds of fuels, and they all combust in their own special and unique ways.
So it sounds like we can close the book on another oopsie-daisy.
Oopsie-daisy!
Ha ha! Take that, science, you jerks.
But this was for science.
Yeah, but we're also jerks, so.
Oh, we're the jerks.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we have a second question this week, oddly enough.
Wow, what a shock.
What a shock. Question 2 this week. Can music, sans lyrics, be funny?
Can I tell you a thing that I always thought was very, very funny?
Yes.
And I think I mentioned this a very long time ago, because what I'm going to talk about is our original theme song.
Ooh.
We had it for the first 8 episodes before we got the vaguely musical intro. Yeah. And the thing that I always thought was very, very funny about the original theme song, at the very end of the original intro, like it goes da 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 bah. And it's just like whoever played the piano just smashed all the keys at once. And it's just very funny to me. And that's the whole story. There are no lyrics in it. It's just a very funny, just like there's the song and it's going along. And then all of a sudden the guy just mashes the keys together. And it's like, okay.
So this was a very loaded question for me. And I did not to talk about all the things that I thought about talking about that for this would take much longer than I think we have for this show. So I wanted to kind of get that out there before anything, is that like a lot of the things I'm going to bring up, I have incredibly simplified, but they're all very debatable and philosophical topics, I guess.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think that ultimately music without lyrics can be funny, but I thought it was kind of interesting to go further and talk about, can music be like inherently funny without any other outside influence? Like you can tell a joke and that joke can be funny on its own merit. Can you make a song that is just funny?
I see. I think if you make a song on the tuba, it is often funny.
I think the tuba is the funniest of instruments.
Yeah. Followed by the sousaphone.
Followed by any elementary school band concerts.
Yes, elementary band concerts are the funniest instrument.
It's funny in a heartwarming way.
Yeah. There's a quote that I like by E.B. White. Humor can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process, and the innards are discouraging to any but the purely scientific mind.
That is so true. Wow.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, here's the other thing I was thinking of. It's just like, when it comes to music, I mean, there's a lot of factors in it. And I think that songs that are going to be funnier are going to be songs that are very much up-tempo, like our original theme song, which, hey, if you go back to listen to episodes 1 through 8, there's a lot of early installment weirdness going on back there, but we had a different theme song, and it was kind of catchy. So
you mentioned the tuba, and one of the examples of things I'm gonna bring up a little later in my notes, but I don't know what it's called, but I wrote it down as the tuba song, and it's that riff that goes da 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 da, and I was like, that's like a pretty well known kind of funny song.
Yeah, any song with a slide whistle is pretty funny.
I feel like as with any other type of comedy, like without language, I feel like there is a lot of possibility with timing, you know? So like unexpected noises or sounds, whether they don't fit the rest of the song or the rest of the genre, like anything unexpected can, I feel like, lean to that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting too. One of the common things, whenever people try to define what makes something funny, one of the first things we can think of is a subversion of expectation.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think that's fascinating because in language, and again, that's not a blanket rule, right? That's just one vehicle for which we can explore humor. I didn't mean that to sound pretentious. I just couldn't think of the word I wanted to use.
Quit dissecting frogs, man.
Quit dissecting frogs. That's all my notes. That's why I wanted to say that. I'm telling you why things are funny today, and feel free to stop listening. But the idea of subversion of expectation. So a pretty typical formula for a joke is like a garden path joke where like I'll do a setup, which is leading you down to a conclusion that you're waiting for. And then the punchline is, oh, it turns out I was talking about this instead of that. And music is very like built around these like things that we've studied, that people want this kind of resolution to certain phrases, and they want music to build towards something. So a lot of times if you compose a piece of music and it just ends on a note that you're not expecting, it's not so much that it's funny, it's more just kind of unsatisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes entirely a lot of sense. Could have picked my words better there. It makes entirely a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And one of the things I was thinking about is just sort of like, what would you say? Like songs that are discordant, but still music. Because I think you can go too far with that, because there's like avant-garde music where it's just sound, and that's not funny. It might be artistic. I think it's wild. But I will not yuck your yum if you're into avant-garde music. But it's not funny. It's just sort of noise, and it's cobbled together, and it's all mishmashed and stuff. But I think there's like a balance you got to strike between things that are unexpected and things that have just become like out there, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Yeah. That does. Because I think another way to create it, to make music funny would be to resemble a noise that our brains have like already labeled as funny.
Right.
You know, like, I feel, do y'all know the song Baroque Hoedown? I feel like the Disney parades like used it for a little while or something. But I loved that song for a little while. And it's like, there's all these funny noises in it, like squishy sounds, and I just overall find it a funny song, and I assume it's intended to be, but I think it's because those noises are like we're familiar with in another context, and they're silly noises.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That makes sense. Another element that really factors in, so sans lyrics, another thing that can make things funny is context. And I was thinking, There's a symphony composed by Tchaikovsky, in which one of the instruments listed in the score is cannons. And at the time, like when he wrote, like this is not a funny song. This is a Tchaikovsky symphony. But when I heard it and when I knew that they were cannons, I thought that was funny because contextually cannons are like a silly thing to use as a musical instrument, I guess. And so
yeah.
I have a bit of a paragraph here, so I apologize for this. But one of the things I kind of looked at in researching this is taking music out of this question and just trying to find what else can I explore about it. And that is anything inherently funny? And I know there are some people that would and have tried to tell me that, like, for example, profanity is inherently funny. Swear words are if you say this swear word, that's funny. If you say some kind of vulgarity, that's funny. And I firmly disagree with this, because the reason that those things are funny, if you find them funny, is not because of what they are. It's because of the social taboo. It's because,
right.
We shouldn't talk about this in public, so we're getting away with something. And that's that. And there is a famous idea. You may have heard this, and I kind of researched where this came from, that the K sound is supposed to be the funniest of all sounds. That doesn't actually hold true in languages other than English.
Oh, well, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually an axiom from, like, vaudeville. And the reason that it's, like, famously known is there's a play called The Sunshine Boys by Neil Simon, came out in 1972. There is a scene in which an aging comedian is teaching his nephew about comedy, and the quote is, 57 years in this business, you learn a few things. You know what words are funny and which words aren't funny. Alka-Seltzer is funny. You say Alka-Seltzer, you get a laugh. Words with K in them are funny, etc.
I literally just laughed when you said Alka-Seltzer.
Right?
Yeah.
But
although it might have just been because it was a discordant thing to say in the middle of that story.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. It's absurdity. I said this random thing that has no context. That's really kind of what you're laughing at.
Yeah.
And I read that there was a study at one point done by a Richard Wiseman, who was a professor of the public understanding of psychology, and he tested people's reactions to a list of jokes, and he concluded that the joke on his list that people laughed at the most was the one that had the most K sounds in it, which I think is a faulty conclusion. That joke, in case you're interested, is...
I am.
2 ducks were sitting in a pond. One of the ducks says, quack. The other duck says, I was going to say that. That's right.
Again,
cute.
it's absurdity, though.
But absurdity. Like, what are the other jokes on the list if that one's the funniest?
I couldn't find the other jokes. And I think, and I feel like this is a test that he went in with a presupposition.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like confirmation bias here a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the other thing is that with the idea of certain sounds being funny, certain instruments, I think, could be funny, but they don't make specific sounds. They make different musical notes. But the tuba, I think, is pretty funny. Kazoos are funny. So, see? I just had to say kazoo and you laughed. There you go.
I like kazoos.
I do wonder, like, I feel like kazoos are so ingrained societally to be like a humorous effect.
Sure.
Like, if that weren't the case, and of course we'll never know, if that weren't the case, would it be funny on its own?
Right.
The example I was going to bring up about that is the accordion.
Oh,
a lot of people in my life, and I think maybe in like America, perhaps, think that the accordion, if you play the accordion, it's funny. And maybe it's because we associate it with like Drew Carey and Weird Al. Those are like literally the 2 accordion players whose names I know. But if you go to Germany or Italy or a lot of places in Europe, accordion music is not usually played for laughs. We even think of like polka. Polka isn't really supposed to be played for the sake of, isn't it ridiculous that I'm playing polka? It is supposed to be like fun and energetic.
Yeah.
But
it's not ha funny.
It's not like, laugh because we're playing polka. Like how dumb is polka, right?
It's like dance music.
Yeah. It's party music.
Yeah.
I feel like in our culture, for some people, like bagpipes are kind of thought of.
I thought about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I mean, they're often not like dance music per se, but sometimes I feel like bagpipes are supposed to be very somber. But with the sounds that our ears are accustomed to hearing, it's not what we would necessarily think of with like somber music or something serious.
Yeah, bagpipes are often played for funerals.
Yeah,
and in Scotland, and I agree with that. Well, so this is all kind of like certain music has entered the public zeitgeist. Again, not trying to be pretentious. These are just words that I use.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's fine.
But the tuba song, the name of which I really should figure out, that da 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 da,
Yeah.
is kind of something.
The tuba song.
I'm calling it the tuba song because that's what I put in my notes to remind me of which song I wanted to talk about. The circus music, which is the gladiator, do that noise. That was originally supposed to be the introduction of the champion of a gladiatorial arena, and we think of it as clowns.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one I wanted to bring up, I'm sure you have all heard this, Chopin's Funeral March, which it's the one that goes da 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 da.
Oh yeah,
that one. That song is played so often in like cartoons to show when like a character dies, but it's in a lighthearted kind of cartoon.
Right.
So that's. I was thinking funeral music that has been translated now into is often used as in like a comedic way.
Yeah.
I was thinking of and maybe this was intended to be funny, but I sort of feel like it wasn't. But is it Spanish flea or Spanish fly?
Flea.
Okay, Spanish flea. It's the I always think of it as like telephone hold music. Yeah. I think it was maybe on a game show.
I feel like it's been used for that. Yeah.
But I feel like it's funny because of the context built up around it, in that it was used like as game show music and hold telephone music, and the Benny Hill theme. The Benny Hill theme is really energetic and really catchy, but I don't think it would be funny if it wasn't the Benny Hill theme.
That's very possible.
So I think some songs can be funny on their own, and I think that a lot of it is kind of like what Catherine says, where it's like where there are like discordant things and kind of things that take you on a wild journey. But I also think that there are some songs that, even if they don't have lyrics, wouldn't necessarily be funny if there wasn't a lot of outside context giving them that humor.
Yeah.
I
also think that several of the examples we mentioned, the music and the context of the music kind of ceases to be music and is kind of used as a word in our communication. It's kind of used as like, I'm bringing up this song because you all know it. You don't actually have to listen to it. You're hearing it as if it's like a cue in our language.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about that with this question. I was thinking back to like the first time that I like had that realization as a kid is like something like music alone can be funny.
Yeah.
And are you familiar with Flight of the Bumblebee?
I am.
Yeah. So that song, I remember listening to it in music class in elementary school and listening to it, and then the music teacher telling us the name of the piece. And I could just like visualize this bumblebee while listening to the piece. And I thought that was so cool that it was almost funny. And I remember going home and talking about it. And that was like, there was a tangible story attached to it. But I think that also comes from knowing the intention of the composer as well, and the title of it.
That's really interesting. I didn't think of that.
I wonder, like, if that were called Intermezzo number 5 of Symphony 32, like, if I would have thought the same thing.
I think I don't know specifically about Flight of the Bumblebee, but I know that Flight of the Bumblebee is pretty much just all notes on a certain scale. And I had learned from trumpet players when I was in high school. I mean, this was a particularly good trumpet player, so I'll say, but he said it wasn't actually that difficult to play, but it sounds really impressive.
Oh, okay.
But there are like songs from famous composers like Beethoven, Chopin, et cetera, I just name dropped the two that I like the most.
Yeah.
But they often have nicknames to them. One that there is one of Chopin's preludes, I think, is called the Raindrop prelude, but like if you go Google it, it just has a bunch of numbers attributed to it, like
Yeah.
prelude number this, first movement, whatever,
Yeah.
musical
Yeah, that's
composition terms. But knowing the name of that song, there's a through line through it that you can kind of hear. It sounds like a very light rain, maybe spilling off of a roof and dropping onto the ground. But like, I don't know if I would get that if I didn't know that it was called the Raindrop Prelude.
Yeah.
Now, do you know if that was the composer's choice to add those words as like an afterthought to it, or is that somebody else's like interpretation of it, that the words have gotten connected to that piece like forevermore?
I can only say in that particular instance, Chopin is the one who named it.
Okay.
But that very likely isn't the case for a lot of other pieces that became famous. So
yeah.
Here's an observation.
Okay.
In a very similar vein, I only know like the extremely broad strokes of Peter and the Wolf, I listened to it once, and I would not be able to tell you what the story is about.
Kid goes out and hunts a wolf.
Yeah, but like I wouldn't be, because I know there's like specific things that are supposed to be happening in the story that you're supposed to like be able to imagine, and I could not tell you what any of them are. So, so I think that's kind of interesting that like with what you were saying about the Raindrop one or the Flight of the Bumblebee, where like when you know the title or the author intention of a song, you can easily imagine it. But then if you don't, then you can't, or at least I can't.
So this happens in like ballet a lot. I tried to figure out what the actual story of the Nutcracker is. And I learned this was a long time ago, but I learned that most of the time when people produce the Nutcracker, there isn't like a script or an official story of what happens. There are all of the musical pieces, and probably some iconic famous things that happen in it. But a lot of times when people produce the Nutcracker, it's like a little bit different story-wise.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know if that is true about other ballet. I know that that is true about the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, because you don't have like a script per se, right?
Right.
You have your choreographer who gets to artistically choose what happens, right?
Yeah, and we have the music, which I believe is also Tchaikovsky.
I think you're right.
But he wrote the music, and that's what has survived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more point that I want to make.
Is it the rim shot?
Dang it, you just took all the thunder out of everything. Like, that's how
Is it?
music is fun. No.
Oh. I was like, there's no way.
I just kind of now think that this episode should end with a rim shot. That's all.
It can.
Definitely.
We can edit one in at the end.
So ultimately, after all the research and all the theory and everything that I was reading through, and I cut so many things out of my notes because I think this has been a lot of me talking, and I apologize to both of you for that.
Oh, no, not at all.
But so ultimately, I think that music can be funny, but I don't think that it is as simple to make music funny as a lot of people think, because it's a different language than speaking.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up. There is a video I watched on YouTube earlier in the year, maybe like late last year. It was a bunch of YouTube musicians that have all collaborated, and the prompt was essentially the same as this. It was compose a piece of music that is funny and it's not allowed to have any lyrics. And there were like 5 or 6 people, and they played each of their pieces one after the other. And I listened to was like 5 out of 6 of these pieces were kind of, I composed this piece for flute, and then I listened to the flute, and it was kind of just a person playing flute badly. And then the next one, it was like things were all discordant, and it was like just bad. And I was like, none of these are like funny. It just sounds like music I don't want to listen to.
Yeah.
But then there was the last one they played, and he had taken a bunch of samples of the sounds monkeys made. and he had mapped them in by pitch to different keys on his keyboard, and he composed a song that sounded actually kind of good, but like all of the notes were performed by monkey noises. And the biggest thing, and it actually sounded pretty good, and it did make me laugh, but the thing I wanted to kind of throw out there is, did that make me laugh because it was funny, or did it make me laugh because everything I heard before it was not?
Oh.
Huh.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
It sounds pretty funny.
It was like well written. I liked it. I'm going to have to find it again.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
I don't know why. This reminded me of video game songs.
Ooh.
And I think it's because of monkeys. I think that was what made... Well, no. So I'm gonna walk you through my brain forest here.
No, I tried so hard to get out of there.
Yeah. So when you said about the monkeys being the instrument, it made me think of Earthbound, which is a Japanese RPG that was released on the Super Nintendo, like 1995. Anyway, the way that they made the music in that game is really interesting. One of the tracks in the game is the first 3 or 4 notes of All You Need Is Love.
Ooh.
But the way that they mapped it onto like a keyboard was that each time you pushed the key on the keyboard, it would play those 3 or 4 notes in that key, or like in that note. And then you could like shift up and down. It's actually a really creepy piece of music, but that's how I got into Earthbound. And Earthbound has a lot of music that's just kind of funny. And a lot of the background tracks for different areas of the game have like silly, not silly noises, but like notes that are off kilter a little bit, maybe like in a minor key. I don't really know enough about music to be able to explain it, but because it's a video game, there are no words at all. And some of the music is funny, even if the situation doesn't necessarily merit it. Like combat music can be kind of funny. Some of it, it's very high tempo, that's for sure. But I don't know. It's just kind of interesting because there are a lot of different ways you can make something funny, but it also, there's a very fine balance you have to run, because you don't want to, like you just said, and like we sort of said at the beginning, it can't be too discordant. Sure. Because then it becomes artsy.
Artsy is the nice word to use there, I guess.
But I think video game music might be a really good example of places to go to look for funny music that has no words.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listeners, let us know what music you think is funny and why, I guess. It's analyzing comedy. It's such a great idea. Tim, do we have any listener mail this week?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet @VaguelySci. And this email comes to us from Callie. And this is in regards to episode 84, Jedi Blood Types. And Callie writes, did you know that your syringe on the title card for episode 84 says for oral use only? You couldn't draw blood with it. Love the show. Keep on making it. It's funny. I actually did see that, like when I was uploading the stuff onto the blog, and I was like, I'm not going to fix it. I don't care. I don't own any blood drawing syringes. That would be a weird thing for me to own. So.
I'm just going to start claiming that anytime we make like an oversight like that, it's like a Where's Waldo, like find the obvious mistake we planted.
Like, I knew that it said that, and the solution to that would have been I could just turn the syringe over and retake the picture. But I was like, I don't feel like it. It's a whole process to get a picture from my phone to my computer. It's not even a process. I use Google Drive, and I'm lazy, okay? But I appreciate that you caught that, because I wondered if anyone would. So thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. Stitcher is working again. I just wanted to make an announcement about that because I found out today.
Oh, it is.
Awesome. But if you don't follow us on Facebook or Twitter, then you might not have found that out. But you can go there and all the other great places podcasts hang out. Ooh. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Just like Clifford, the more you love us, the more we grow.
Hey, that's actually quite true.
Yeah. See, I'm charming sometimes.
Yeah.
And humble.
Our vaguely musical intro, which is our current theme song, was composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and you can check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. We have that new Bigfoot's Best Friend shirt. We have our semi-aquatic horse lifestyle shirt.
Yeah, we're actually getting new merch.
Oh, I always forget to mention this, but the designs that we put on Threadless, they don't have to be shirts. You can get them on any number of different things, like mugs and skateboards. We talk about the skateboards a lot. No one's ever bought a skateboard.
Segways.
Segway. Oh,
Ooh.
I don't know if we have Segways in us as an option.
No, we don't have Segways, but you could get a sticker and put it on the Segway.
Ooh. There you
Nice.
go.
Threadless offers greeting cards now, and I kind of want to buy a bunch of semi-aquatic horse lifestyle greeting cards because I want to send them to people and just see what they think, because that's nonsensical.
Our designs are designs. They're not all t-shirts.
Yeah.
But they are all designed by several panelists on the show, and so support us that way. Show us some love.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Catherine for being our guest this week.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is a blast.
Excellent.
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Catherine.
See you later, alligator.
After a while, crocodile and toodaloo.
Yay.
That wasn't about dogs at all.
I tried so hard. And so I looked up quotes about goodbye and dog, and that was a mistake because they were all quotes about dealing with grief for losing a dog.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I'm not going to research this anymore.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. No.